Hey there, my name is Kimberly Inez Mays, and I want to take a little bit of a step back to talk about something that's a little philosophical in the news and also not directly pertaining to business, but really pertaining to how AI and large language models work and some of the pitfalls or some of the blind spots that people have when it comes to using large language models or what they can actually do versus like what they actually are, right? And I am going to frame it from the lens of censorship or what people perceive as censorship, but really it's just how large language models are built and are trained, right? But before I get into all of that, if you don't know me or if you've just heard of me or if I'm a complete stranger to you, I want to introduce myself. My name is Kimberly Inez Mays. I demystify technology for service-based businesses so that they can finally stop duct taping their systems together and start scaling with confidence. And part of scaling with confidence is really understanding how things work. And understanding how things work is really important. So I'm going to try to talk about things that aren't necessarily related to business, but are adjacent to business enough that it can affect your business if you don't understand how it works and are using it. All right, so I'm going to stop talking in circles and really get down to what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about AI, free speech, and the Grok controversy. And I know that there are people who are on the left or the right politically. I'm not getting into all of that. I'm not even going to disclose like my own beliefs about some certain things, but I am going to talk about how large language models are trained and also talk about some of the things that can happen if the training goes awry or if we take down some of these guardrails and what the potential for harm could be. And so recently, as of this recording, Grok has come under fire for really having its model be too unrestricted, right? Yeah, that is the word. Too unrestricted, right? So a lot of times people complain that they put something in an AI model and it doesn't match their belief. And that is because AI or these large language models, they have biases. They're trained by human beings. They're trained by people. And they're trained by people to recognize certain keywords and phrases so that people can't use it for harm. People absolutely can use it for harm and have used it for harm, but these companies have a responsibility to set some guardrails to try to mitigate that as much as possible. And through that mitigation, they apparently made some people unhappy, but same time, I believe no business can make 100% of people unhappy. And if I'm being honest with my own take on it, is like you don't have the right to tell another company how to run or how to create their product. So if you don't like how OpenAI or Gemini or whatever has trained their model, or you don't like the answers that you're getting back, you absolutely don't have to use it. But it doesn't mean that you should be able to use it for harm or push harmful things or use it for discrimination or hateful messages and things like that, right? So I'm tempering my words very carefully because I just don't want my videos to be taken down. But at the same time, it is very important to understand that things do have biases, but the companies are trying to at least do the right thing, or I should hope so. So here's what happens, and I'm actually going to just refer to my notes. If you see me looking down, it's just because I like to make sure that I am as accurate as possible. That is my responsibility when I'm creating content, is to be as accurate as humanly possible. Although I make mistakes, obviously. But as of July 8th, the AI began posting a series of extremist messages, including praising a certain person that was not really good in the 20th century, and all of these other topics that are just really, really awful. And it produced a lot of hateful content, praise of hateful people, conspiracy theories, graphic and violent things towards individuals, and it had to be scrubbed and taken down. within a day. They were tweaking the system's prompts to prevent this type of speech. And I know that a lot of people are very upset that they want certain content to be produced, but for the collective good, I believe that these guardrails are absolutely needed. And I expect that a lot of people will disagree with me, but you know what? That is okay. So it's not a one-off glitch, and it's examples of what happens when AI guardrails are loosened. Harmful messages can and do get amplified. It seems like such a long time ago, but I remember back in maybe 2 years ago, 2023, where a lot of people were using a jailbroken version of ChatGPT because they liked it. They got to circumvent some of the guardrails. And I just never had a desire to do that because, number one, if I got to jailbreak something, it's just not worth my time to use it. I'm not that type of person where I want to do that. Um, I do respect the policy that the company set in process. And I am capitalistic enough to know that if there's not one platform that will do it for me, I could just go elsewhere, right? I don't need to bend the rules like that. And even if I needed something, I would never need it for some of the nefarious purposes that these other people are using it for. Um, so if you're complaining that this is censorship or whatever, I really don't know what to tell you, but I'm just unpacking this, and setting boundaries isn't censorship. It's actually accountability. So I wanted to say all of that because that's how these large language models work. They're trained off a lot of data, but not all of the data is good data. So there are actual human beings who are deciding, okay, well, we can't talk about this, can't talk about that, can't talk about that, can't talk about that. You can't use these certain words, these certain slurs. You can't tell it how to do. You can't ask it how to do something that's illegal or harmful. And I think this is okay. I think this is literally okay. And the reason why I'm making this content is because a lot of people think that these platforms are just magical genies that just appear out of nowhere and that does not infuse human guardrails, biases, and creativity. You'd be mistaken, right? So the idea is to, number one, understand how it works. And I could get into more of that in a little bit or in another video. But then number two is to vet what you're prompting into it, being very clear on the result that you want to get out of it, being able to put together a clearly defined and well thought out prompt, whether it's one prompt or a chain of thought, or somewhere in the middle, knowing how to prompt. And then the third thing is just knowing how to vet the responses. Like, is this response free of bias? What am I not considering once this response comes back to me? Am I using it to make important decisions about a person, a group of people, even about your own business, even about, whether you should launch something, if you're analyzing consumer sentiment, maybe, English isn't their first language, or maybe there's phrases or idioms that they might have used that are misconstrued. Is there some misunderstanding when you're interpreting data from an input and what you're getting out? Is there a vetting process that you have so that somebody can actually read what's being outputted before decisions enacted on it or made from it, or even worse, like posted on your behalf? These are things that you really need to take into account, right? Whether you're doing, and especially if you're doing anything that pertains to psychology, health, legal. And when I say psychology, I not only mean like a licensed psychologist or therapists, but I'm even talking about people in the coaching industry, people in the health and wellness space, anybody dealing with people who might be struggling in some ways, or, things of that nature. You want to understand that there are privacy implications that you need to make sure that you are um, managing and mitigating well before putting your client's data into one of these systems. And then you just have to make sure that whatever platform you're using has a commitment, and read their policy on how they're going to implement guardrails for every model that they put out. There are certain models that I'm not going to say which model which, but I just probably wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, just because they're out of alignment with how I feel about humanity and how to treat people in fairness, right? They're just those systems. I'm just like, no, not for me. There's enough out there to make me happy. I don't need to play in that area, right? So that's really all I gotta say about that. Let me see. I'm just going through my notes to see if I have any other thoughts. But this is not necessarily like a business topic, but it's so important to understand how things work, because whether you're doing, like I said, something with people in a headspace, or just making decisions using these tools, or promises that you're claiming to make based on the output of these tools, you really want to make sure that it's what you want. It's what's going to best serve you. It's what's going to be fair for those who are coming to you for help. And it's going to be something that reflects well on your brand and business, right? So I had to tie it back to business somehow, but I also wanted to address a particular recent topic, because I tried to be topical like that. Well, this one was a lot shorter than what I had imagined. I think that this would be really great for me to have a conversation with another individual. So if this is something that you either agree with me or strongly disagree, or if you have like some really strong opinions, let's collaborate. Let's make something out of it, because I definitely do want to continue to talk about it. And this is something that is new for me, talking about things that might be a little controversial. But I don't know. It's an exciting time to be alive, for sure. So that's all I got to say about that. But one last thing, if you're wondering how to use some of these tools for your business, if you're like, okay, Kim, you've scared me enough where now I'm worried, or you've intrigued me enough to where I'm now curious, I got something for you. So go ahead and book an automation insight session. I know there's automation in the name, but we also do systems, tech stacks, SOPs, all of that good stuff, right? But it all starts with that one session. So we talk about what's not working, what's working, what you've tried before, and how I can best support you. All right. So with that, that's all I got to say about that. I think I said that like 3 times, but that is truly all I got to say about that. All right. So until next time, take care, be well, and I will speak to you later. Bye.